Welcome back to OpenLine. We are talking about easing back to school anxiety. If you have a question, whether it relates to your student, your child, or yourself, go ahead and give us a call. The number is 615-737+. Love to hear from you. Dr. Edwina Chappell here with me, and we were just talking during the break, and this is really heartbreaking. 80% of children not diagnosed who have anxiety disorders. 80%. Why?
Well, and we kind of mentioned many times people kind of overlook you know, the fact that treating anxiety disorders is really something that needs to happen, so they don't ask for that kind of help. And you know, like a lot of other behavioral health disorders, then they just go kind of under the radar.
Sure.
But the longer, as with most things, the longer that they stay untreated, then actually they can just spin off into something even, you know, much worse.
Right.
The other thing that we talked about is that people may not think about anxiety disorder because some of the behaviors look like ADHD. And we also kind of mentioned during the break that sometimes the young people get so frustrated because, you know, they're so anxious, and you know, and it's interfering with their ability, say, to be able to, you know, do as well as, perform as well as they think that, you know, they should be able to, or whatever. And so then, you know, they just do, instead of that flight thing and backing off and avoiding, then they do that fight thing.
Right.
And that really creates some significant problems at school because, you know, we kind of know once children kind of get associated with a lot of aggression, you know, that kind of acting out, disruptive kind of behavior, then sometimes it just makes it, you know, more difficult for people to want to kind of intervene in a positive way. Yeah.
And you want your child's teacher to be your ally in this. But there is a parent-teacher road that has to be walked here, and you got to walk it together, and that can get very sticky sometimes. So when do you intercede? Let's say you know your child has anxiety, whether it's separation anxiety or it's the testing anxiety. When do you talk to that teacher? When's a good spot?
Well, I think that's some kind of communication that really needs to happen very early on. Sometimes children may, you know, end up having negative attitudes from, you know, staff associates because they see those behaviors, but they don't understand what's going on. When the parent has communicated and said, you know, and kind of set the stage and explain to the teacher, you know, these are the kinds, and then they see that child, I think, in a different light, in a more positive light, and really are appreciative that you have shared that information, because now maybe they can, you know, like better work with that child. Because what they also may do, if they themselves may not have what they think is the expertise to kind of know, you know, what strategies to try in the classroom, then all of the schools have social workers, and they're probably school psychologists assigned to those particular schools, and so you have some behavioral health and nurses and so forth, you know, so there are a number of health and behavioral health professionals there that can, you know, be able to work with staff, you know, to give teachers some tips that they might be able to use.
Because not all children learn the same way, and that can be a default that many schools, or a negative stereotype that many schools try to combat, is that, you know, you can't just sit there and teach students all the same way and expect them all to get it.
Right.
And you certainly don't want your child to be seen as a troublemaker when they are just having some trouble.
Right. And the other thing, and thinking about, you also, I think as parents sometimes we have to remember too that each of our children is different. And so, you know, there are some children, because I can just think about, I have 2 children. They're grown now, of course, but they were very different. And so, you know, but sometimes we think, and we might say, not to be hurtful or anything like that, well, Johnny didn't do it like that, you know. He was always able to go and stand in front of the group, and, you know, so, but this child just may be you know, a little different and needs a little more attention, a little more encouragement, a little more, you know, opportunity, you know, to be able to, you know, feel like he's got, and we recognize that there are children that, I mean, no matter what situation you put them in, it seems like they excel.
Right, exactly, yeah. You remember those kids in class, like, they do great on everything. What's the deal?
Exactly, but then there are those that really need a little, you know, nudging, a little, you know, motivation, and so, you know, kind of staying positive, and the other thing, rewarding, when I kind of praising attempts toward that. You know, sometimes we want the whole enchilada, you know, so you need to get to the whole thing. I want you to be able to stand up and do that speech, you know, by you. Well, but maybe he just got up and walked toward the stage. Good job.
That's a big step if you're scared to death to speak in public.
Exactly, because if you've been sitting back here and you refuse to go at all, then getting up to even go toward the stage is tremendous. And so that, as you mentioned earlier about building confidence, you know, that's going to help do that, and it's going to relieve a lot of that, you know, anxiety, and they're going to feel like, oh, this is possible, you know, and so so those thoughts, you know, that are going on with them that are very negative, telling them, you can't do that, or this is going to be the worst thing. When you get up there, everybody's going to laugh at you, and, you know, because that's kind of some of what they're hearing. It's very, very detrimental, and so they're thinking, this is going to be the worst thing that ever happens, but it's not. And, you know, so we need to be as encouraging as possible, you know, about every little step. And I think, you know, we'll see some as parents, they will see some great movements toward getting to that, you know, end step that they would like to see if they start giving those little praise tips and incentives, early on. It helps.
What about sharing your own experiences with your child? I imagine it has to deal with their age, how much they can really relate to that and take it to heart. But do they listen or not? Because kids just like to tune out their parents. You know, they don't, especially like my little ones, I don't think they ever thought I was a kid. They just think I'm mom, you know? So does it make a difference?
Yeah, I think, they do. And we really do need to spend more time, you know, talking to, I don't know if we can say this enough, but, you know, some commercials that talk about, you know, talking, communicating, you know, put those cell phones down, you know, put all this electronic stuff down, take some time and just, you know, be together, just be a family, kind of, you know, talk about some things that are going on. And also you want to say about school, you might want to ask some open-ended questions, you know, well, you know, how did that, for example, if they had a science fair, how did that science fair go today? You know, so that they can kind of tell you more about what really happens, as opposed to just being able to say yes, no, whatever. You want to communicate and you know, kind of find out, because you can also sense like how they were feeling and what did you do, and you know, because that they'll have to kind of talk about that. And I know we think that they don't want to say anything, but actually our kids really want a little more structure and a little more from us. Now, sometimes we have to work hard to get it sometimes, especially as they get older, because their friends become more important, of course. But, you know, we just have to kind of catch those moments. You know, maybe we're in the room and we were kind of helping them get their room straight or so forth. And, oh, I need to put the pillow on the bed. You know, and so just some of those little opportunities, and they'll say, Mom, but that's okay, you know,
because you're communicating.
You're communicating and so forth. And the other thing is too that sometimes we are kind of surprised at the topics that young people really want to talk about with us, and we're going, oh, you know, where's this coming from?
I wasn't ready for this conversation.
but we're communicating, and so you know, it's a great start, and they know. It helps them know that you're there for them. You know, you're there to listen, and you're there to kind of, you know, guide them. You know. Be there for them. You know, you don't want to do it for them, and that's the other thing too. You know, when you think about anxiety disorders, you know, we don't want to totally eliminate it, because anxiety is just, I mean, it's a normal part of life, right? And so we have to understand that stress just comes with living.
Life.
Yes, and so, but we all have to learn how to manage it appropriately, and I think in working with, you know, our young people the way that we do, and kind of being there for them and that kind of thing, it gives them the opportunity, you know, to kind of say, well, it's not as bad as I thought it was, you know. So don't block. And I know sometimes as parents,
we just want to make everything perfect, you know?
But life isn't.
Right.
And so, you know, we want to make sure that when those situations arise, they're able to manage it on their own, and in working with them, you know, giving them opportunities to, you know, to practice, rehearse. You know, as we've mentioned, some kids are going to need that, whereas some kids, you just say, see you later.
I was just watching this video on Facebook from a billionaire businesswoman, and she said growing up, her dad, at least once a week, as they were sitting around the dinner table, would say, what have you failed at this week? Tell me what you failed at. And she would have to, you know, tell a story like, I tried out for this team and I was terrible. And he'd say, well, what did you learn? You know, what are you going to do differently? And she said, I learned so much more from my failures than I ever did my successes. And I think that we can all probably relate to that. But I thought, wow, as a parent, that is really an interesting perspective. You don't want to celebrate failing, you know, I guess, you know, all the time.
No.
But you do want your children to experience that and then take it to the next step of, well, how did it make me better?
Exactly. Well, actually, there's some, kind of remember way back when studying for licensure examiner, which is a long time, but still, actually, you know, in practicing, the strategy is that you not only focus on the correct answer, but you focus on the answers that are incorrect and why. Oh. Which is kind of a similar thing. And to be honest, just like that daughter, I learned more from focusing on why something was incorrect than I did focusing on, well, this is the correct answer, because really helped me to kind of think through the whole scenario, which otherwise I wouldn't have.
You're just looking for the right thing to check. Absolutely. Okay, on that deep thought, we're going to take a break, but when we come back, more about easing that back to school anxiety. We want to start these kids off on their best foot next week, so stick around.